Today I have with me Aranya Sahay. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's pretty straightforward. So I have been talking a bit on my page about his film called Humans in the Loop, which I managed to watch recently by asking him to send it to me. Uh, so this film I really liked, and it is a very smart, intelligent, thought-provoking film, especially in the current times where there's always a conflict between tradition and technology, and this film really brings forward that very effectively. And uh, you recently won an award at the Bangalore International Film Festival, and it has been doing some screenings in other places also. I think you had a screening also in Chandigarh Film Festival recently, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the film is currently doing festival rounds, and we will also talk about the release and distribution of the film during our conversation. And I'm sure it will be a very fun conversation because this is a topic that is really something that intrigues me, very close to my heart. So first, I want to ask you, what is the whole idea behind the film, which is about? I'll tell everyone what the film is about. So this film is about an Adivasi woman in Jharkhand who takes up a job as an AI data labeler, right? That is the
Right.
designation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's about her uh, life and her role as a single mother while she struggles her job and her personal life also. So first, my question is, how did you come up with this profession to work on in the film? Like, why did you choose this particular profession? What is your motive behind combining that with someone hailing from a tribal background? So how did this come about as a whole?
See, the idea itself exists in parts of Jharkhand, in Telangana, in parts of Rajasthan, where a lot of AI companies have their back-end offices where this kind of data labeling work is happening as we speak. This was highlighted in an article by Karishma Mehrotra. She writes for the Indian Express. The article was called "The Human Touch," where she spoke about Adivasi women working with AI. But you understand that this is a very important. Like immediately, I knew that there was a very interesting story here. But where do you take it to? You don't know what the narrative is going to be and what the story is going to be from just the idea itself. So the root of understanding what this interplay between Adivasi and AI meant was in understanding data labeling. And what is data labeling really? Data labeling is a sort of it's an act where a human being tags goes through thousands of photos and videos and tags objects in it. For example, a chair and a table, they would tag. And gradually, based on that meta tagging, based on that labeling, an algorithm begins to understand the difference between as simple as a chair and a table, right? So when you look at it like that, when you begin to understand what data labeling is, you realize, at least I realize, that there's a deep connection between labeling and the act of parenting. Because
Right.
when our children are growing up, we teach them how to differentiate between colors, between objects. Then we force our morality on our children. So when you look at it like that, it opens the film, and it opens the discussion up to a much larger discussion, which is, if we as human beings are the custodians of all history, culture, materiality of planet Earth, then if we are passing on our knowledge to another entity, which is AI, are we only passing on one type of knowledge, or are we capable of passing on a lot more? Are we capable of passing on a much more diverse, a much more honest and authentic depiction of what human life is, and which is not just limited to the first world, to the global north or the west, as you may call it.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate that, you had two children for Nema, who is the protagonist. So one is a teenage daughter, and she's kind of rebellious because she suddenly feels betrayed that she has to live in that particular area and leaving her life behind because her mother
Yeah.
just separated from the father. And there's this also the baby who is literally like learning to walk and taking the first steps. So there's also a parallel between this AI model that is, with every single data that is being fed into it, it slowly learns to move in certain way and walk in certain way. But so because your film focuses on this parent-child analogy and the with the training of AI also, and there are statements like AI is a child, you have to train it accordingly. So how do you see that analogy from your perspective, like all the genetic elements from ancestors coming into a child's upbringing, or the way AI is it being born out of nowhere, or there are many elements or data that is being fed into it? So what kind of perspective do you bring into this?
So, if you understand data labeling, the process of data labeling, where a person goes through 1,000 photos and videos and tags them, tags the objects in them, and then an algorithm begins to understand the basic difference between, say, a chair and a table. That process itself, I realized very early on, is very much similar to parenting, right? Because when our children are growing up, we teach them how to differentiate between, say, colors, objects. Then we enforce our morality onto our children. So when I realized that this is the exploration that I can do with this film, uh, um, I felt that, there are two schools of thought, as you also said. There are two schools of thought. One is which says that our children, or children of any animals, when they grow up till the age of 5, or the equivalent to other animals, different ages, till the age of 5, whatever we teach our children is what has an impact throughout their life, right? So they are born. The idea in that school of thought is that the children are born as clean slates, and whatever we teach them is what they will uh, show up. But the other idea is that children are born with almost 300 odd patterns of their ancestors already. This is another school of thought, and this has been, you can even see it in, for example, Daily News. You can see it in Dune also. The idea of the voice.
Hmm.
All your ancestors stay within you.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not just there are psychotherapists who've spoken about the patterns inside, genetic patterns that come about. So those parallels, when you apply the same parallels of a child growing up to AI, you're able to see that is AI really a clean slate or a blank slate, or is it born of the biases or the strengths or the knowledge systems of its ancestors, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you can talk about AI bias, which again is another very topical and very important topic in this discussion. AI bias is, for example, very peculiar and very interesting idea in AI and machine learning studies, which is that a lot of human biases inadvertently seep into AI because of the data that it is being trained on. For example, Amazon did a recruitment drive where they automated their recruitment. Then gradually their algorithm began, what it did was it began to only recruit men. Why that was happening? Because almost for the last 10 years of the data that was fed into that algorithm, 80 to 90% were men. So it was going to only recruit men. So that kind of becomes a very, very important topic to discuss right now,
Hmm.
especially with data which is, even in these Adivasi areas, till today, even though the labeler is an Adivasi woman or an Adivasi person, the data that the algorithms are being trained on, or the data that they have to label, is primarily first world. It will be photographs of people on Instagram, etc. I don't know, licensed or unlicensed. That's another complete discussion, but they're primarily from the first world. So the glimpses of for example, parties, the glimpses. If you ask for it to create a political building, a building of political importance, it will more or less create the White House,
Yeah.
or it will more or less create the British Parliament, because two-thirds, as it said, two-thirds of the data it is being fed on, is being trained on, is essentially from the global north.
Yes, and that is obviously happening because the companies that are carrying out these tasks are based on in these places, and they are just branching
Absolutely,
out in
absolutely.
different parts of the world. So I have actually done some amount of data annotation myself, like a small
Oh,
side hustle kind of thing. So there
oh,
was yeah
what kind?
there were some images to be labeled, those things were there, but mostly like writing stuff, generate meaningful prompts and compare responses and choose the response that works best, those kind of things also. But yeah, I have noticed these things that most of the images that I got to work with were like of white people and all. But there
Hmm.
were trainers, the people who were training us, they were based in Africa and South America, all these kind of places.
Correct,
So they
correct, correct.
try to get that labor from all around the
All,
world.
all
Uh,
around the world, wherever
yeah,
it's cheap,
exactly. So yeah,
but the data is still
that's why also I could relate to the movie a lot in the sense that I understand the job and I understand the process that goes into it. But the choice of having an Adivasi woman do that is also very interesting from a point of view. It's where you bring in like nature versus technology, like where the simple caterpillar aspect that was there in the film about the
yeah,
caterpillar being a pest or not. The Western world thinks it is, but an indigenous person thinks it is not.
yeah,
And then she's at a conflict like, what do I do with this?
yeah,
So there were many, obviously, minuscule things that were involved in the whole process.
yeah,
But one thing that I want to ask, which I probably not understand very well, is the porcupine, which I see kind of a representation of nature, but also something a bit scary because it has thorns and everything. So the girl, she's initially afraid of the porcupine, and later on, she accepts it as something that is part of a natural habitat. So what was the idea of that? Like, I could be mistaken in my understanding, obviously.
Oh no. See, I think everybody has an interpretation of the porcupine, and rightly so. Please have your interpretation. For me, I have three answers to your question.
Okay.
Two are non-serious answers, and two are serious answers. One is the non-serious answer. The uh, the first one is that Adivasis have totems which are essentially ancestral deities of sorts. So जैसे हिंदुओं में कुल देवता या देवी होते हैं.
Mhm. Right, right.
Similarly, there's a lot of tribes have different animals,
Animal.
or for example, or plants or fruits that they trace their ancestry to, which are like guardian spirits of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
From a very writing perspective, is that there is a character, Nema, in a when she's younger, she has a bond with a porcupine. What does that signify? It kind of signifies that the shyest animal in the jungle has a relationship with you. So your bond with nature is a lot deeper than even people in your own tribe, right? And in that sense, her bond with her own self is much deeper. So in that sense, she's whole, she's complete. Then life happens to her. She gets into a relationship with a non-Adivasi, and she's when she goes into that household, she's called a savage, she's called a drunkard, she's called all these things, and then she has a daughter who doesn't necessarily relate or adhere to her ideas or her life. She moves away from that wholeness. Nehma moves away from that wholeness. But towards the end of the film, when Nehma sees her daughter with the porcupine, is when she's whole again. So the journey is from completeness or wholeness to incompleteness to wholeness, but of a different kind. Different kind, especially from the eyes of your child. So we tend to kind of go in that direction, that we tend to discover something of our own selves through our children.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what from a writing perspective, though, that's what the porcupine is about. But I think porcupine is also coming from the idea of listening to Porcupine Tree.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to listen to that band also
Yeah.
at some point when I was getting into rock music little bit. Yeah.
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 What do you listen to? Like, what was your zone?
Not a very like bands that people did not know much about, but I actually so it wasn't particularly rock, but I got into Coldplay for a while when I watched I went to their concert when I was I in Europe. I was living in Europe. I went to the concert in Paris 2017. Then I
Okay.
got in touch with more people who were listening to more rock songs, and then they suggested this Porcupine Tree. This is song called Lazarus, right?
Lazarus. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I was listening to that, and then Guns N' Roses and all these kind of. I don't even remember all the names right now, but I
So
also
Porcupine.
watched Bohemian Rhapsody. Then the movie was not that great, but I got into Queen. So yeah. Especially movies have a role to play in these things also.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just wish somebody but nobody will make a movie on Porcupine Tree. The music is so good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Then all these Arctic monkeys and all these kind of.
Yeah. There's a interesting, a lot of filmmakers have also spoken about this, and maybe you could use this in the interview, whatever you
Mm,
think, because this is very interesting. A lot of filmmakers have spoken about the closest relationship that cinema has to another art form is actually music.
mm,
And it's not necessarily theater, it's not necessarily paintings, it's not necessarily literature, but it has very much a close connection and a kinship with music. Why
mm,
is that? And if you look at Porcupine Tree's music, for example, there's a certain progression of emotion, right? It's not necessarily telling a story, but there's a progression of emotion in a
mm,
10-minute, 20-minute long songs
yeah.
where it goes from one emotion to the other, which is how the structuring of film is also very much like that. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
it's
mm,
like a symphony going from one emotion to the other, and not necessarily logic. It
mm,
need not be logical. It can be completely away from logic. But
yeah, yeah.
there is that relationship, a beautiful relationship between
Mm,
music
mm.
and cinema.
Yeah, in India, we understand the relationship between cinema and music in a whole different dimension because
Yeah,
the movies have songs. But yeah, that's not always the case in other places because they have separate genre of films called musicals which have songs.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I see what you mean. It's the structure.
Yeah, it's the structure, it is the flow of the scene flow.
Hmm, hmm,
How the last moment in a previous scene
hmm.
translates into the first one in the another. It's a symphony, na?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
For example, a Dangal.
Hmm,
I keep taking Dangal because I really like it. And Dangal's flow is very much like it is a screenplay oriented film.
hmm, hmm.
But even then, it has got this flow, lyrical quality, and it stays with you.
Hmm. Yeah. Like how all these sports dramas essentially they end on a note of victory where,
Yeah,
everyone is elated because
yeah,
the person you're rooting for is achieving what they set out for. All
yeah,
these a lot of music pieces also have this crescendo in the end, which gives you that
yeah,
high kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And like I keep thinking that हमारे यहाँ राग अलग-अलग राग होते हैं. If we understand our rags
Hmm. Hmm.
interesting light. Each rag, for example, Des or Hamsadhwani has a crescendo, like you're saying, right? But not every Bhairavi doesn't have that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
uh, uh, Yaman doesn't have that. So if we kind of understand our own rags or listen to it, then there's a scope to structure our films very differently also,
Yes.
which are different from this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but all of these ideas are very beautiful because they combine to give you. But I like the writing perspective answer the most because it's like going from wholeness to incompleteness back to wholeness. That's a character arc of a fictional character as well as us in real life in
Yeah.
general. So uh,
And
that
us
resonates.
going towards wholeness through our children,
Yeah,
which is different,
right,
which is
right.
uh, it, the feeling may not be the same, but the outcome of that is the same.
Yeah,
when you find
exactly.
wholeness to your children.
That also brings back to the whole point of trying to mold your children in a certain way because you want to see a reflection of yourself in them and
Mm.
probably fulfill some unfulfilled dreams. That's
Yeah.
always been the case, whether, you know, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that does happen. Yeah. But this whole emotional connection, whether it's with a machine or a child, like if you're training a machine, I think you will have some kind of emotional connection at some point. But these things, we have seen in coming up in science fiction films like Interstellar, Arrival. These are very emotionally rich movies, which is not always very easy to do in a science-based or science fact or science fiction film. Like your film is not something that I would call science fiction because it's already happening. It's not futuristic. It's not based on a technology that is not yet, which is something I also mentioned in my post.
Yeah.
So I will maybe put the post in the description also. That whenever we think of AI, we tend to think about something that will happen in the future, and that was, I think, still fine 20 years ago. But now it's right here in front of our eyes, and we are using it on a daily basis. So it's not science fiction anymore. So
No.
how important do you think is to have this emotional core in any kind of story you tell, whether it is something that is, myself being a scientist, I don't agree with the fact when people say science is dry and boring. It's very much the opposite. It's
Yeah.
immensely beautiful. So how do you see this connection between science and arts in a film like yours, but where you've like deliberately tried to put it in?
See, for me, for example, this idea that, uh, sorry, for me, this idea that an Adivasi or an indigenous perspective talks about life in everything. So you can also hear the heartbeat of the of a rock,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
How does that translate when you are dealing with a machine, right? With an AI, which somebody around you is saying AI is like a child, AI is like a child, AI is like a child. But what would that do to you?
Yeah.
If you come from that deep philosophy that there is life in everything, so that really became the exploration for me, that became the core of the that one thematic core, which is just at the background, but it is so, it is such a backbone of the film, that if you believe that there is life in everything, you will treat it with the same kind of respect that you treat other human beings or other animals around you. So in that sense, that idea shaped up the film. But the other idea, as you're rightly saying, you know, see, Denis Villeneuve is absolutely one of my favorite filmmakers. And you see, especially in Arrival, you see, and especially in Interstellar also, you see that there's a string of emotional storytelling on which they've hung a lot of their sci-fi geeky
Hmm.
things. They're
Yeah.
also science geeks. You can see it in their films. All both of them are science geeks, and so am I. In that sense, that on the emotional string of the mother-daughter story, I'm able to hang everything that I want to say, which is essentially what is the place of AI in the larger realm of human nature conflict. What is the what does AI mean for the representation of larger humanity?
Hmm.
But the core of it holding, like the last scene between the mother and the daughter, is what holds the film,
Hmm.
really.
Hmm.
Everything else is intellectual. Everything else is in the mind. But what I've always felt this. What we latch on to is people and the deep stories that are inside people.
Yeah.
Which play out in the form of for example, the mother-daughter story.
Hmm. 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 But like comparing AI with a child, that also tells me when you're trying to find that emotional connect or whatever kind of connect, you're trying to understand how AI is like a child. But a child is kind of speaking back to you when you are teaching it something. It is responding in a human way. So it's a human-human interaction. But when you are teaching an algorithm something, and then how does it speak back to you? That is the question one might think. It's not, you don't feel that human response.
But you do feel a response now when, for example, in the film, you see it generate certain outputs for example, a tribal woman.
Hmm.
She puts a prompt in that AI
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
generator, and the prompt gives out a certain kind
Okay.
of image.
Yeah, yeah. I see
So
what.
that is a response, no?
Hmm. Hmm.
Even though it's fictionalized, it's a like in data labeling centers, that prototype testing software is not there. It
Hmm.
is only, you would know that it is only uh, tagging, and based on that tagging, they see the appropriateness of your tagging. But
Yeah.
here we had to also show what how the AI is responding to the training data,
Hmm.
and that in a sense is an interaction, no? Two-way.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a physical interaction, it is a interaction of idea
Hmm.
in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But so controversial question during these times, because we are now, all these Ghibli artwork and everything. Some people are saying, okay, it's a trend that we are having fun, so we will generate AI art. It makes us feel good. Some people like me are saying that, AI art is not art, and it's like kind of doing a permutation combination on existing artworks that belong to someone else. Maybe there's a copyright violation, so you are kind of being disrespectful to years of work. So what is your stance on that? And you can be honest about it, even if you have different views, it's totally fine.
See, I do think there is a copyright angle to this because there is years of dedicated uh, art and creative energy that has gone into creating some distinct styles. Especially Ghibli is one of them. But that said, I don't think all AI art is necessarily copying.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of, for example, people, the average ratio of getting an image that you want out of an AI art generator is 350 to 1, in the sense that after you do
Yeah.
350 prompts, you get one image. So
Hmm.
there are people, for example, there's an artist called Pratik Arora. He's trying to create like a Indo art which is AI based, but which is also futuristic in its nature. So
Hmm.
I feel that a lot of the prompt writing, a lot of that is also a skill which is just being developed,
Yes, yes.
and
Hmm.
that also has some kind of creativity. That also has some kind of maneuvering. So I don't think. See, it's also a debate of human collective consciousness and individualism.
Hmm.
That really is the core of this debate.
Yeah.
Is all knowledge and all art collective, or is it primarily individualistic? And that debate has been on for a while. And it's not just AI; it is also using Shakespeare's plays to make films,
Hmm.
or using Shakespeare's plays to tell a different kind of story, adaptations. So I think we'll find the water will find its balance, but
Hmm.
I don't believe in these outright statements that AI art is not art.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I don't think like that.
Also, simply if we look at any kind of adaptations or retelling of stories, for example, take something like Devdas, which has been remade in so many places in so many ways. So there's always a different way of saying that. But yeah, my main concern is basically whether there is a permission to reuse or even use a certain percentage of
Yeah,
something that is publicly available. So that's why, all these stock images and all those things.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like Ghibli is such a crazy example right now because I mean, I was trying to read about it, and I don't know if Studio Ghibli has given the authority or
I
the
don't think
authorization
so,
to
but
AI.
there's no clear information on
Yeah,
that as far as I.
there's no clear information because if it is not, and if the creator itself has said that AI is an insult to
Mm,
life, then there's a strong stance against it, right?
yeah,
There's a strong stance against. So in that respect, how can you use somebody's work
yeah,
and then perhaps monetize it? Like the fact that so many people have come to OpenAI to create these things for their own personal whatever usage shows
yeah,
that there is traction, shows that they have numbers, shows that there is money generate, there's a chance to generate money. So that is exploitative in a sense, if those rights and those permissions are not taken. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the
Because I've
case.
seen people putting out reels and posts saying, "Oh, I will generate this for you. You give me money," because it comes with Chat GPT, like a paid subscription
Plus,
thing. Yeah.
uh, uh,
So people are banking on the opportunity in whatever way they can. So those
it's
things are also.
crazy. Some of the most controversial episodes in India's history are being gigafied. I
Yes.
saw it and I was like,
Yeah.
what is this?
Yeah.
You know,
Anything is
it's
possible.
the very opposite to the essence of
Hmm.
what Ghibli
Yeah.
Studios has done.
Yeah. So now, yeah, that actually I was just thinking that is also about how the whatever technology is available is how the powerful people control it. That is how the narrative eventually becomes. Like in
Yeah,
film, the kind of images that are being fed are of, Western people from the Western world and people from the privileged section of the planet. So the narrative is often driven in that direction, and then people who are from underprivileged places or developing countries, they have to flow along with it even if they don't want to, and that is the main problem because they
yeah.
don't have the resources or the power to voice their opinions in the way that they should be heard. Like the technology or whatever knowledge system comes in a in its like nascent form in the world, and then it's mostly controlled by people in power or from people who are sitting in privileged places in the world. So then they are the one who dictate how that should propagate to people in the third world countries or people in the global south, where they are not really in power to control that knowledge system. So it's also kind of what we understand about history being told in certain ways. Like history can have different aspects to it, but we see what we are made to see. Like the British won't probably accept the
Yeah.
kind of whatever they have committed in the world. So how do you see this thing about the propagation of knowledge systems?
I think it's uh, on a global level, it's very much imperialistic. Whatever power dimensions happened during the Industrial Revolution have because of Industrial Revolution, money and economy was concentrated in a few regions in the world. And once money, economy, military is concentrated in a few parts of the world, knowledge starts to flow. Third is the knowledge or the soft power, it starts to flow in a certain way on a global level. That said, it is same for India also. There is a certain community, there's a certain class of people who hold and wield a lot of power through the access to knowledge systems.
Hmm.
And it is only the depiction of, for example, our wedding in films. If you see weddings, they only are they're the same, right? There's a sangeet, there is this. All our friends are getting married, the weddings are becoming the same. There is that homogenization which is driven by the dominant narrative, and
Hmm.
um, on the global level, it's imperialistic. On India's level, it's very, very much related to caste and class. So that really needs to be spoken about because we are हम अपनी larger knowledge system को हम वंचित कर रहे हैं ना. We are keeping
Hmm.
the very essence of, for example, an Adivasi way of approaching knowledge or an Adivasi way of approaching life away from the mainstream.
Yeah. Hmm.
And what would it would only help to have these ideas seep into our lives and vice versa. अभी एक ही वन वे ट्रैफिक है अभी. The idea of beauty, the idea of fairness,
Hmm.
etc. All of it is I've seen. मतलब वहाँ भी what I was talking about, people using phones, etc., etc. They've also the problem while the internet penetration and while demographic like knowledge has been democratized. It is very much the question of whose knowledge is being democratized. Can it be the other way?
Yeah. Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, and can the idea that a worm is not a pest, can that be can that be spoken about? And this, so when I was researching for the film, I would go through YouTube and Google, and there was only homogeneous information. My real anecdotal research came from talking to people there, especially two people. One, the best idea actually came from when I was trekking, and this boy was like, you look up there and you can see a silk, you can see a resham bunne wala worm.
Silkworm.
And then he told me that there's another worm. I can't even see it, it's so far, right? But they're able to identify it. So that is the kind of nuance that happens when you interact with nature on that kind of a level. So
Right.
that nuance is absolutely lost in the larger dominant
Hmm.
narrative.
Hmm.
The other thing is that there is for example, there is somebody called Bulu Imam. He's an Adivasi art conservationist. His wife, Philomena ji, I would speak to for many hours. And she told me this idea that, when we walk on grass, we thank it. When you apply that same thing to a non-Adivasi, we feel entitled to walk on that grass,
Hmm.
right? There is no kind of
Yeah.
give and take.
Humility. Huh.
Yeah, humility. Absolutely, that's the right word. And we think we are entitled to walk on that grass. And so, if this knowledge system were to seep into the other knowledge system, it would make the world a lot more humane, I feel.
Yes, definitely. It's also something that you see in trends also. Like you said, the homogenization of culture in terms of, everyone doing the same thing. So this wedding trends, everyone is doing this pre-wedding, everyone is doing the same kind of photographs. Now
Yeah,
they are coming, the photographers with coming with these packages. We will give you 2 or 3
yeah.
reels. What if I don't want to put a reel? What if I'm not on social media? That is very much probable, but that thing is out of
Absolutely.
question because every
Bihar had such a beautiful tradition of like alta वगैरह लगाना
in
on
Bengal
सब.
also we do that.
In
Yeah.
Bengal also, in men also you would have that, and that's just gone. I just went to two of my friends are Biharis.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
are doing. I just went to the wedding and we are doing the same pattern. Not to say that their wedding was anything there's anything wrong with that, but it's just we've lost a lot of.
Exactly. And that's very sad given that our country, especially, there is so much diversity in terms of culture, language, traditions,
Yeah,
everything. And it's becoming very, I don't know what to say, one tone.
homogenized.
Yeah.
Yeah, homogenized and especially like Brahmanical. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. Uh, so as an independent filmmaker, what are the kind of challenges you face when you want to put out a film like this? Obviously, it's very different from what the mainstream audience is used to seeing. Obviously, there has been a lot of appreciation, a lot of accolades that you're getting. But how do you see the release or the distribution of something like this, or what challenges do you face as someone who is, just starting out or who is not backed by a big production house?
see, it is immensely challenging. But that said, a film like ours, I realized after Mummy that people are making it their own. It has got that mother-daughter aspect. It
Yeah.
has got an apology. It has got a wishful uh, thing of coming together of parent and child. So people are making it their own. And after Mami, I saw 300, if there were 300 people who attended the screening, 50 were putting up these small, small posts, not just stories, posts, which stayed on their profiles, writing about the film. They were writing on Letterboxd. So I realized that the we have something which is resonating with people. It just needs to be shown as much as possible. So a lot of films after Mami, they have a lifespan of 2, 3 months maximum because there's no distribution scope
Hmm.
uh, currently. But the idea was that we need to show it as much as possible. So we started doing these in between festivals, in between IFFK, Bangalore. We're going out right now to Los Angeles. What are the what all places can we show it at? So there's National Film Archive of India where we showed it at JNU where we showed it. IIM Calcutta, SRFTI, Soho House. We're going to go to BIC. I'm going to show it at India International Center soon. The thing is that at every screening of these, we invite 40 journalists, 10 turn up, 3 write about it. Every screening is an opportunity to broad base the
Right.
word of mouth for this film, which
Hmm.
is the real strength of the film, right? The greatest marketing tool for us is word of mouth. So we're using that when we have enough momentum, which we're already gaining. I think by the end of June, we will have enough momentum to look at an OTT or to look at a theatrical, which might be limited, which may not be limited. So we're looking at all of those possibilities right now. But it is difficult, but it is not impossible because, see, for example, a lot of industry folks have also come out in support of the film. So many seniors have seen the film, and they've spoken about backing it and supporting it or presenting it. तो उससे भी बहुत फर्क पड़ता है
Hmm.
mainstreaming a film. और ये है the language of the film is, because of the mother daughter story, I feel it has that family audience connect also, which we are always trying to crack in the commercial space, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, मैंने देखा है families coming out crying, and then almost all age groups, like older women, younger women, younger men, older men, all of them like having different reactions, but having positive reactions to the film
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Hmm. 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 So I think the key here is to keep the conversation going. Like there should be a buzz around the film, even if there is no festival, because, like you said, there are a lot of these, private individual film clubs and forums that do screenings from time to time. So it's good to keep in touch with them and hold screenings wherever.
Yeah,
And obviously, I think nowadays social media also plays a great role, because I don't remember where exactly I saw about the film. I think there was some post about some screening, and that's why I reached out to you, because it seems so
yeah.
interesting. So obviously,
I
the
think it was
premise,
uh,
if the premise
Rahul.
is as intriguing, then it's obviously very useful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it was Rahul Desai's review.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
the Hollywood
Rahul review.
Reporter India. Yeah. So it also helps when, big critiques like this are talking
Yeah,
about it. So
absolutely.
essentially word of mouth. So do you think, like, in today's generation, people should be bounded by marketing and budget so much? Because I don't see that's such a big problem. Depends on a lot of competition, because India produces a lot of films now. People are watching films from all over the country. There's the big budget mainstream commercial films happening, but then there are smaller films. So how would you influence people to find good films among all this noise? Or how would you say that, okay, this is what
I
you
mean,
should.
I think people like you,
Mm.
like Gangs of Cinepur and Long Live Cinema, and all these pages that are there, they're very crucial because there is an audience here. Even Habitat Film Festival is happening right now. It's people are people flock to the theaters because
Yeah.
we are not finding meaning in a lot of mainstream work. It's far and few. We are only finding certain kind of bravado, etc., which is repetitive. The problem
Yes.
is not that it is bravado. The problem is it's repetitive. So
Hmm.
एक point
It's
के
not
बाद वो
one minute.
audience
Yeah.
भी ऑडियंस भी कितनी बार जाएगी तो उसलिए I feel like you're in the kind of reach that your page has, even if say you have
93.
98,000 followers, 93, right?
Stuck at
So I
93 for
believe
a while.
that that's fine. It'll I'm sure it'll grow.
Doesn't matter.
But no, it'll grow, I'm sure. But the thing is that 93,000 people following your page, there's a footprint of at least, I believe, there would be 500,000 people who your posts can eventually reach out.
Yeah.
So अगर 5 लाख लोगों तक तुम्हारे posts reach out हो रहे हैं, and my film is reaching out to, at least, for example, in JNU, right? I spoke to a friend of mine who works as an influencer, and another who has a 23, who's not an influencer but has a 23,000 kind of following. Because of them, the footprint of that post became 50, 60,000. Because of that, JNU screening, we had a 450 seater. We were not just full, but people were sitting on the aisle, people were sitting on the floor, and it was मतलब खचा खच भरा हुआ था.
Hmm.
So this is the power of converting from social media, I
Yeah.
feel.
Hmm.
Uh, that said, I also feel like, these film institutions have a responsibility, like older FTI, National Film Archive of India, SRFTI. They, apart from the students that they are teaching, there is a certain responsibility that, they broad base. There
Yeah.
is a film society movement kind of a thing. They broad base it to the general public. जैसे
Hmm.
NFI में I would see every Saturday was a public screening. Why can't the screenings that we have at FTI be open to at least 10, 20 first come, first serve
Yes, yes, yes.
basis to people?
Hmm.
उससे एक व्यक्ति से 5 लोग खुलेंगे, 5 लोग से then it will grow to 20, 30, 40. इसी तरीके से and within a generation, within 10 years, we'll see a lot more audience for the alternative.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I feel also, drawing an analogy with science communication. There are, specialists who are working in a certain field, but if you cannot communicate it to the masses, then it doesn't really have any effect on your, like, you are not doing the right job. That's what it's the same with films, because there are these niche films. People say, okay, we are a very, we are serious cinephiles. We watch art house films, and then you're gatekeeping it, you're keeping it to yourself. But I don't think that's the way to do it. It's both art and science. These are things that you have to propagate and
Absolutely.
let it out. Otherwise
Absolutely.
there's no use of having it in the first place, I think.
All of knowledge, all of education, all of literature needs to be broad based. Otherwise, like, what is the point of somebody holding on to
Hmm.
one person holding on to knowledge and then dying? What is the point?
Yeah, imagine if that happened since the beginning of humanity, like even all these, the how the Vedas were transferred to
Yeah,
people and through the Shruti thing and everything.
yeah.
So that's how civilization evolves essentially.
Hey, and अभी with the advent of, we don't realize, see, मैं झारखंड जब गया था, तो मेरे साथ जो लड़के, we didn't have any film infrastructure, right? So वहाँ पे हैं line producers, but they're expensive, so we couldn't afford them. So
Yeah.
a lot of the location finding, a lot of the other connecting to people I had to do on my own. When I was trying to look for locations in Jharkhand, I would trek with 18, 17, 18-year-old boys who were wearing Naruto t-shirts. And they had like the same buzz cut that you see in Bombay. They were
Mm-hmm.
wearing Crocs. And when we would be tired, we would sit on the hill and we would scroll through the same reels. He's watching the same reel as I am watching, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And at that time, wo cameraman jaldi focus karo wala thing was going on quite a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
that reel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So मैं ये सोच रहा था कि ये in the deepest parts of India, we don't realize that 2016 has been a watershed moment in terms of internet penetration. Like the introduction of Geo cheap internet
Yeah. Yeah.
has really reached the remotest part. Like we were on a hill where a bear resides also. We were on a hill where जहाँ पे leopard भी है, but
Hmm.
the same time we are getting internet, we are scrolling together and
Yeah.
laughing
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the so that is of course one part of the knowledge. What this has done is entirely, so many people have been able to, for example, crack UPSC without formal institutional these
Hmm.
big
Hmm.
coaching institutes. People have just gone on the internet, looked for the right material, chased it, etc., etc. ये सब भी हुआ है ना?
Hmm.
So we need to kind of acknowledge that, and that is a part of passing on, as we were discussing, part of
Hmm.
passing on knowledge.
The best example is, I think, during COVID times, where in the remotest parts also people were able to attend lectures online and
Yeah,
complete their course. That wouldn't be possible without the kind of knowledge system we have right now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so what else do you want to say to the audience about the film or whatever? Because I think I've pretty much covered whatever I wanted to ask.
What do I want to say? I just want to say that um, this film about an Adivasi woman interacting with AI, however, like the premise is interesting, but the film explores a narrative which is very contemporary. It explores a narrative which is deeply moving, and I think it is one to see, to experience it, and not just, I don't want the film to get lost,
Yeah.
which is my greatest fear. That which is any filmmaker's greatest fear, that the film will get lost and nothing will happen of it. वो मैं नहीं चाहता हूँ कि वो इस फिल्म के साथ हो, और मुझे नहीं लगता है कि वो होगा.
Hmm.
बट अभी भी I still have the fear because there is the films do become stale within a year because there are newer films. Khan will happen again. Another big film will come. Then other big festivals will happen. New films will come. पर उसमें उस जद्दोजहद में ये the through your medium, I just wanted to reach as many people. If it can reach, say, if one viewer of your page can reach 5 people, and those 5 people can eventually, that word of mouth can continue, then we can have enough push. See, there are a lot of films which are bottom up.
Hmm.
See, या तो पैसा बहुत लगाया होता है, and there's a lot of prestige which come from top. Everybody wants to watch it. But our film is such that has come bottom up because we don't have a actor who's well known. We don't have a director. We have a director who's first time, and this is not even my, like, even indie wise. This is my first proper film. I've been doing shorts before this, so it's even that way. This is my first film, so only word of mouth is what is
Hmm.
constantly pushing it up.
Yeah.
So let's just keep the momentum going, and I think we'll reach enough, bargaining power to have a release
Yes.
soon.
Yeah. I'm happy to do my best, and I'm
Yeah.
sure more people will watch it, and obviously it will get a good release also.
Yeah.
But so why do you think there's this problem with retention nowadays? Like you said, people forget films after a while. That wasn't so much the case before, or was it the same? And now we are kind of suffering from an overdose of films from everywhere, and we just cannot handle it.
नहीं, वो भी है बट उससे ज्यादा ये भी है कि what is the call to action, na?
Yeah.
See, the if I was doing a marketing campaign for a month or 2 months, and then the film was releasing, to fat say there was conversion.
Yeah.
But why it is difficult for a film like ours is that the call to action doesn't exist right now, right? कि इतना you are talking about the film. There's been so much conversation around the film. People are asking, where do we watch the film? The biggest question is, where do you watch the film? जैसे ही वो आंसर हो जाता है, then the last final marketing month will be very different from what it is right now. It will not be uh, one review, one interview, one this that. It will be a lot more, marketing driven. तो वो call to action का issue है
Mhm.
with our kind of films.
Hmm.
All the films, like even Sabarbonda, for example, it won at Sundance, or Bakshubandi,
Hmm.
it was at Berlin. We are trying to keep the buzz alive. And पर उसका कॉल टू एक्शन क्या है, कब देखने को मिलेगी, कब नहीं मिलेगी.
Hmm.
अगर वो कॉल टू एक्शन बहुत लेट है तो अभी का बज तो फिर फिजल आउट हो जाएगा ना.
True, true. Very true. Yeah, these things need to be strategized with whatever resources we have available at our, disposal. But it's really nice that people like us who are there to help independent filmmakers out. We are trying to do our
Absolutely.
best. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think your page, that Long Live Cinema page, then
He
uh,
does a great job. He also he has a quite a big YouTube channel at this point.
yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Hmm.
Chalchitra was the first platform. Weber was the first guy who saw the film and put it out, and his putting it out really
Yeah,
you
yeah.
saw a swell
They
of
have a
interest in
very good
MAMI.
audience space. Yeah.
Yeah, and Humans of Cinema. All of
Hmm.
these guys, like all of you guys, newer supporters of cinema and also criticism, also critiques of films. They're as important in the ecosystem as other filmmakers.
Yeah. I'm glad the landscape is changing in a way that will eventually, hopefully, help filmmakers like you.
Yeah, yeah. Nee, there's a guy, I know who released his film on YouTube. We
Hmm.
never know that this might, and he's got some 1 million 1 million views on the thing. So he's been able to, if he's kept his costs down,
Hmm.
he's been able to get his recoveries,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's on the largest platform of storytelling.
Hmm. Hmm.
OTT से सबसे ज्यादा बड़ा तो YouTube है ना आज
Yeah.
की डेट.
Yeah,
The problem is कि YouTube is so scattered and the quality of content is so
exactly.
shabby.
It is very much possible that your film just gets lost somewhere
Yeah,
without
yeah.
distraction.
It gets lost or it'll sporadically do something for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had a short film called Mirki, and the first film I made, and I would start getting messages from Bangladesh,
Hmm.
from Sri Lanka. It
Hmm.
was again a story of a child who has epilepsy and how his family deals with it.
Okay.
And कितनी जगहों पे इसका साउथ एशिया में ही कितनी जगहों पे कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट वाइज देयर सिमिलैरिटी
Mm-hmm.
दैट some people are reaching out from there.
Yeah.
And है इसका बहुत स्कोप है. I mean, creators have done a great job, but the thing is that short format seems to be working great there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. Also, short films don't really have that OTT space as such, I think,
No,
except in
so
some
YouTube,
places where there's also it's on a pay-per-view basis, like movie saints and all these kind of
yeah, yeah,
platforms.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think it's a very dynamic landscape at the moment, and
yeah,
things sometimes tip in this direction, sometimes in that direction, but we need
yeah.
to stay optimistic to see what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much
It
for
was a great pleasure. I was very happy that I am getting the chance to talk because I had so many questions about the movie also, which I
yeah.
got to ask you. And thank you for your time and for this conversation.
Thank you for your time, Vasudha.
And I will keep people updated whenever there is any screening or release or whatever regarding the movie. I'm very happy to do that.
I would love that. I mean, we have a bunch of screenings in Delhi till April. Then we have a screening at G5A in Bombay, and then
Mm.
there's a screening at BIC, Bangalore International Center,
Mm-hmm.
and Beach
When is
North.
that?
That is 24th.
24th April.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I won't be around, unfortunately, as I would have come otherwise. Yeah.
But yeah, we're trying to do all these bunch of these.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, cool.
Thank you once again.
Thank you,
So
Vasudha.
I'll stop the recording.